Hey everyone, this is the Kubeflow Notebooks meeting for the 27th of November, which obviously is Thanksgiving, so we're going to be missing most people from the US region. Um, but we're still going to have a meeting and talk about things so that we can keep getting pushed towards a release for Notebooks 2 and other things. So, I think everyone here knows what Notebooks 2.0 is, but if you don't, go to this issue. It's a full rewrite of Kubeflow notebooks. It's way better. It's after years of kind of rethinking about what end users want to actually do when they're spawning interactive development environments on Kubernetes, including laying a foundation for a lot of the future systems that everyone needs, where you don't just have one pod that you're submitting jobs to, things more like Ray clusters, Spark clusters, Sloan clusters, and being a login node for that. So and also supporting SSH, which is a common question, and a few other things as well. Okay, so I don't, was there one new person in the call? I might as well just let them say hi if they want to say hi. I wonder if they know that they're new. I'm intrigued. I think it's Alok. You don't have to say hi, just if you want to. That's fine. Okay, so we since most people aren't here, I'll just very briefly say that what we were proposing for just what we think makes more sense for the community and for notebooks especially and dashboard is that the proposed timeline for the 1.11 release was a bit crazy. Um, and so which was something like next week or something. So we propose instead that we target a release of Kubeflow, not necessarily Kubeflow Notebooks 2.0, but a release of Kubeflow um, before KubeCon, like targeting a finalized release just a week or so before KubeCon, which would give us a, just under 12 weeks, I think, for that, and which is the normal release cycle of 12 weeks. Um, we'll see what that does, but if we don't do that, then we're going to end up having to release the old versions of Notebooks 1.0 and Dashboard into the 1.11 release, with the exception being that yeah, I mean, because I always like to do at least update the notebook server images with the latest versions of PyTorch and CUDA and other things like that as well. So, yeah, I mean, we might cut release just for that, but it seems we're in a state where we still need to finalize the releasability of Notebooks V1. And I think there was some discussion about pull requests that need to be merged just to finalize that. But we'll talk about that maybe in the next section. So, um, dashboard, I don't know if anyone here is involved actively in dashboard release preparations. So like we've got a new repo for dashboard where uh, I think mostly done there. Like we can check, but it just I think there was a little bit of pausing in the work so that we could focus on 2.0 for a second. We also need to bring not Kimonos, well, yes, but Julius into that work, I think, so that he feels a reason to want to move stuff into that repo. Because there's some stuff being added downstream into the manifest, which is a bit weird. Anyone got any comments or knowledge about what's happening here right now, or anything that we could do to make it happen faster? Meaning the goal is to cut a release with alpha. Um, if not, then we'll skip to the next part, which I know there's people for. Okay, cool. Okay, so notebooks v1, meaning we've migrated the code out of Kubeflow. I think there is some discussion around, let's say we are targeting that KubeCon release. That means that the next version of 1.0 could be cut whenever we like, but we should have it cut well before then. The goal obviously is 1.0 shouldn't have any new major features, but security patches and updates for things is good. And obviously the new notebook server images are useful even for the new version of Kubeflow Notebooks 2.0 while we're still waiting for finalizing how we design our new notebook example image layout. We can talk about that discussion as well, probably, if people care about that. Maybe not in this. I don't know if people want to talk about it in this meeting. But so 1.0, Paulo, you said you had some PRs or something. Don't go through the PRs now, but like, so what's the status on this releasability? Say we had to cut a release tomorrow.
Hey,
Oh,
Yeah.
either one. Yeah, sorry.
Matthew. Okay, so currently we have all the PRs ready to review. Andy started to look on them. This week we have few PRs that got LGTM from him, and waiting for your eyes to, to take a look also and to approve that. Also, we have few PRs that still waiting, Andy, to do the first review, and we have, I think, two PRs that still in discussion with Andy.
Okay. I mean, we can use the time after this meeting. I don't know if anyone has time to do it. I can't stay all day, but um, we always have time after these meetings for pull request reviews if they're urgent. I mean, we'll check if anyone's got anything more urgent that needs reviewing, but that is here to be here. Um, would you want to review stuff after the meeting? And if so, maybe prioritize which ones you want to go through first?
Yes, sure.
Okay. Any other comments about the one releasing? So,
No, I talked with Andy and he said that you will go with the notebook servers images. I already created the PR, a small PR, but okay, I will
it's
leave
usually
it.
easier to they're kind of it's a lot of work because it requires thinking about like it's usually best to update them all at once and then do tests because it's very unclear. Sometimes crazy things break when you change things. Uh,
Mhm,
since it's like an end user development environment, it's just the goal is the notebook system as a whole is only as good as those example ones when people first try the project out, you know?
mhm.
We don't really
Yeah.
have a project otherwise. Yeah, so that's also a discussion to be had around what we're going to do for Notebooks 2.0's example images, given we can have a lot more of them, um, and whether we should have its own repo or um, and how to make it so that users can fork and build their own kind of tree of images, you know, uh,
Mhm.
or if we should automate stuff or yeah, these kind of questions. But I know that Red Hat has their own automation system, so maybe we could talk with those people and see how they feel about these things because it's one of those things where I think we need to agree on what we're providing in our example images. Nothing will change for the V1, but I'm just saying. Um, okay, so Paulo, did you want to add anything to that? Given
No, nothing from my side.
Okay, so I guess the next steps to get a release cut, if we tried to cut a release, let's say early next week or some other time, of at least V1 notebooks, but well, I guess we would need to check if we want to do that or not. But we could cut a test release, I guess. Uh,
Mhm.
the although I do want to, maybe I want to avoid doing that just so that people don't pull it in thinking it's the next version. Okay, well, let's go through those PRs after this and check which ones we would want to block the release on. Uh, at very least. Some of them will be required, obviously, but other ones, yeah. Okay, anyone else got anything about V1 before we quickly jump to V2, which I think we should spend the most of the time not necessarily talking in general, but just trying to unblock and get people's perspectives on, for the people who are here, what they can do. Okay, V1, anything else? Okay, message if you need it. Okay, I don't think Andy or Shad is here, so we'll skip that one for now. So we still obviously these priority one tasks are with the goal of the underlying goal obviously is to have users use the product, but I do want to highlight that the intention of the next release of Kubeflow is to have a whatever the state of Notebooks V2 is, if it's able to do anything useful from a user perspective at all, we should cut a preview version, if you know, and include it as an optional component of Notebooks V2 of Kubeflow next version. Anyone have any strong feelings about how likely we are to have something useful by March next year or February next year, let's say? If not, I feel like we will. Personally, I feel like we'll have because I just want to get people thinking about this new pattern.
So I've been discussing a lot about that with Andy. I think it's something we doable for February, March. Um, so we've been working a lot also with Paulo and Charles on with trying to estimate the remaining effort, and the calculation give us kind of those dates. Of course, a lot of things may change because of unexpected things, but uh, it feels like February March is something doable for us.
Again, with the goal not of having a final release. I don't even want something that reflects necessarily what the final release will look like. It just needs to be something that shows off the patterns that we're intending, I think. You know,
Yeah, I believe, but by February, March is, I think that is something we will at least have, I don't know, 80%, 90%. So I think it's doable for that time. If
could
we want to release earlier, well, probably we should try to find out what is the minimum we should release. But I think that it's something that we can talk for sure.
well, I think that's what I'm saying. My definition of minimum is obviously it has to be deployable. Hence why priority one is making sure it's actually deployable and
I
won't
agree.
cause problems. But beyond that, because again, because it's very hard when I was talking to a lot of people at KubeCon and other places, without people seeing it, it's very hard to understand it. I know that there's going to be some big pieces missing, like the admin component is going to be confusing to people without it being present, which it won't be in that first version, I'm sure. Um, like I think because the thing I'm trying to sell and get people's minds into is we've built this on a new foundation. Please give feedback as to everything around the foundation. Like the foundation is finalized, but the pieces around it are like, okay, how do we make it easier to browse these options? How do we make it easier to admin the cluster? How do we make it what are the feedbacks for your end? You know, these kind of things that we kind of we're designing with what we know from our customer discussions, but like having people actually try it and just try and make it useful to them, even though we do need to be clear that it's not we probably want to put a warning, you know what I mean, on the page and stuff like that. But like, and have maybe a feedback link on the page even, you know what I mean? Like something, if an admin chooses to deploy it, they should, it should force them
So,
to, yeah.
so for that, what's your idea of what's your timeline for
So it's
having
not about
that?
timeline. It's about as soon as we have something that I could actually ship to a user with the qualifier that this is for test environments only, and actually have a data scientist or a machine learning engineer do something of value, just something of value. You know what I'm trying to say? Like it's not like it doesn't have to be a like it's like this project is going to keep getting better and it's also going to become more mature, but the thing is that other than the people working on it, we've never shown it in a way that a normal user can experience what the benefits are. Yeah, like they haven't been able to say, "Oh, I use Notebooks V1," but it could be like it's just yeah. It's all I'm saying is, and that with the goal specifically of having it as an optional, if you will, component, but a preview. Maybe preview is a better way to say component
Okay,
of
so
yeah.
I think that, I mean, that's a very fair discussion. The only thing that worries me to have like something that we may use is this time of the year, because actually many people are going to be out during December, so there
Well,
is
no,
no.
yeah, no. I'm not saying we do
No,
it
no,
before.
no, 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 no. But what I mean is like maybe we should have this same conversation the first days of January,
Yeah, yeah.
and I believe we will have a way more clear idea of that. But again, I still believe that if we want to start shipping things, maybe January also could be. I mean, without having full completion, maybe January could be a nice target for us.
Well, we have to ship it with at least like no, well, for the preview components, maybe not, but for the overall stuff, I think my proposal was that we compress all the testing of the stuff to 4 weeks only because it's getting a bit crazy how long we were doing testing for in the old release cycle. So like effectively for the overall Kubeflow, we're still debating obviously what that means, but like in my mind there would be if we were a normal component version 2, that is, like we'd been released before, you'd only be able to release patch releases after the code freeze, right? You know what I mean? Like you'd have,
Right.
and then you're committing to support that minor version for however long that release exists, like that's the idea, right? You know, but for this one, I think preview releases, we can probably keep cutting changes up until the final day, but it's like, so that's another question around like, what does it mean to have that in the manifests repo at a specific version, Is it like, because users will then, we need to make it clear how you swap out a new version, assuming significant things don't change, because some significant things might change, like it's even in the, like,
I think that we need to be very clear about that because there's going to be a lot of differences. I mean, for me, any alpha version should not be supported at,
So in fact,
at any
by the way,
mean.
you know what's interesting about that is the Apache Foundation actually has a policy around this. It's not, we're not the Apache Foundation, but like they pretty much say that you cannot ask users to use anything that is not a final release. You're like you're not allowed to ask them. You can have developers and and things like that, but you cannot suggest a normal end user uses anything other than a final release.
I
You know
agree.
what I mean? It's interesting.
Yeah, I agree. No, but I agree. I agree because in the end, how can we support something that is not complete? That will have a lot of new stuff and even like fixes for previous ones. So uh,
I
if
do
we are
want to
going
have it
to,
as a turned off by default, but say like so the question I think we should have this quick discussion now and we should move on afterwards is like, do we want to put, say we make, like, I think we're going to have something that is not even close to finalized, but it is usable by an end user and a data scientist and a admin on a real cluster by February. I'm pretty sure, you know? And
yes,
so
I agree.
should those manifests, for whatever the heck that version is, be put into the 1.11 release of Kubeflow manifests? You know what I'm saying? Or
Oh,
or as a disabled but enableable option. Or
I,
should it be that we say in the 1.0, we update the UI of the 1.0 to have a thing at the bottom which says, there is a preview release of V2. You might want to try it. Ask your admin. You know what I mean? We could update the UI of the 1.0 to say that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, so
we should probably do that anyway. Like, put a warning in the 1.0 UI that this is going away. You know what I mean?
yes,
Like,
I agree. I mean, I think we should start with the deprecation notification users, like meaning like maybe we are going to support 1.11 for a few more months, but then we will drop all support for that because we are going to move to 2.
yes, yes, yes.
And I think that a feature flag to enable 2, it's going to be the best solution. So for those who wants to go and try by their own responsibilities, they can. But I think we should be very clear on the wording of, hey, this is true, this is a preview, this is your own responsibility. 1.11 is still the stable branch.
But what I'm saying is, do we want to put that? Because I think putting it in the manifests is maybe a bit dangerous. That's kind of what I'm saying. Even if it's disabled by default, that's because the manifest means that uncommenting it could deploy it, right? It also means that if we have any large amount of users who do that, I think I'm I'm kind of answering my own question. The question I think the thing I was trying to do was have people see it. You know what I mean? And I think maybe the way to do that is to put a notice at the bottom of the Notebooks 1.0 UI to say to look at it rather than actually forcing, because then they can just go to whatever the latest version is. So we need to have a kind of what's the current, we should start a bunch of preview lines in our own releases, you know what I mean? And we should maybe cut a preview every couple weeks, you know, like which is like a very much not a release, you know what I mean? It's like it's like rather than having people just go to main, what I'm trying to avoid is people just going to main, right? Like going like that ahead of main, right? Whereas like something that is kind of working, you know, like it's not, because main may not be working at all. Like that's kind of what I'm saying. So having a
Agree.
tag, but that is, we need to think about how we like say it. Like what is it called? You know, is it 2.0.0 alpha 0, or is that too much like looking like a real, I guess it is. It's an alpha, right? Or you know, like
It's
that's,
an alpha, yeah. But again, I think that we should focus on this is an alpha. Do it by your own responsibility. If you want to study it by yourself, you can. And here are all the instructions to install these. But until we are sure this is like going to be final, it should be an alpha.
well, yeah, of course, until we get to release candidates, of course. But like
Yeah,
it's, and then even a beta, like, so I think we should agree on what we mean when we say alpha. Like alpha means you literally should not deploy this on a production cluster. Like
agree.
because it might break your cluster. Like there is a
It,
non-zero chance it will break your cluster. Like this is
yeah,
kind of, and so you can
I
deploy it on a staging or a testing cluster, that's fine. But like it's I think, and then beta is like you can deploy this on a production cluster, but you shouldn't use it for critical workloads. You know what I mean? Like that, you know what I
agree.
mean?
Yeah,
Yeah. And then release candidate is obviously please try this if you can and validate with your users that this is, you're happy with this being the first release, you know? Like this is kind of, yeah. Uh,
agree. I think we should write something, but I agree. I agree with you that
let's
we
just
should
put
write
that as
that
a
in the.
thing. Like, okay, so release notes, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so we should aim to cut many alpha alpha versions of notebooks 2.0 with fully deploy as soon as it's fully deployable, like as soon as with fully deployable manifests, literally the same day as it's possible to actually with the first with with 2.0.0 alpha 0 being cut the same day as it's possible to actually deploy with only upstream manifests from the repo and do something um, that and actually spawn a workspace. Like that's kind of spawn and connect to a workspace. So like that's like the overall goal of this, which is kind of gonna become actually the I'm gonna say this is like almost this, right? But this is like the next priority under here. But I'm gonna say like meaning of alpha. It alpha version tags is effective effectively a preview with uh absolutely no guarantees of anything. Um, Users must not deploy on production clusters and be ready to fully destroy any cluster that they deploy it to. You know what I mean?
I
End
agree.
users should not be given access. You know what I mean? Like admins, I'm gonna say admins, I'm gonna say, end users should not be given access. It's like this. And then it's like a meaning of beta version tags. We can discuss this. I'm just writing it out. Like, um, is like uh the first versions where end users should be given access uh to validate their workloads, and then admins are encouraged to only deploy on staging, test, and if they assume the risk themselves on production clusters. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of, and then this one is, well, I mean, I'm gonna say that admins. It's like this one is like, yeah, but this one's hard. I think beta is harder to define. What is, yes, I mean, this beta one I think is not right because like this one is that one almost like so. Uh, uh, Given access as there is no guarantee their work will not be lost. Like this kind of is that. So like that's why we don't want anyone on the alpha one. It's like this is because you might have to destroy the whole cluster. What the heck's the point of that? Like and then beta, we need to think about what that means. So like the workloads, like this one we should probably be like it is very will we provide any guarantees around upgrading and removing of the tool? You know what I mean? Like that's kind of removing, like you know what I mean? Like the ability to like the way you get rid of notebooks V1 alpha to V2 alpha is kill the whole cluster. You know what I mean? The notebooks V2 beta, maybe it's more like um removing should not require removing should never require deleting the cluster. You know what I mean? Kind of situation, right? Like it's kind of should not require deleting the cluster. However, admins should still take care. The first versions where end users can be given access to validate their workloads. And then, but like will still be we should probably need to define it for each feature category as well, almost, right? Like where there's like almost versions of the overall thing, yes, but then SSH features might be added earlier than they're ready, you know what I mean? Like we might even get a preview of the SSH thing into the V2 release, but it's um yeah, I don't know, this is hard.
Let's think about that. I think we should brainstorm a few ideas and see what other communities are also doing, because maybe we can get some ideas from them too.
Possibly we should mark specific features. Like I think maybe we should have a table. Okay, I've got an interesting proposal here. Create a public table of like core functionality and planned functionality, which shows the level of maturity of each of these features as alpha, beta, or early, like alpha and like preview, beta like testing, and then GA and like production. You know what I mean? Like I think this might be I think this honestly is not a bad idea. Like that if we start cutting a release, we should have a public table which says like, okay, this is and which versions of the app itself, e.g. 2.0, 0.0, alpha point like 5, achieved this maturity level of that feature. You know what I mean? I think this, if we start cutting releases, I think we need to have this, because otherwise it's going to be impossible for us to develop new things that are not even close to beta reliability when we're calling it beta. You know what I mean? Like it's like the beta is the overall app, but you can have features inside the app that are not. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of like that's I think that's critical. I think I just,
Yeah.
kind of like Kubernetes feature flags, like stages. That's kind of okay. Cool. Okay. Any other comments about that? Okay. So priority one, I don't think anyone here is actively doing stuff on this one yet. This is mainly done. We got very close to having. We were working on making development experience a lot better with Tilt. It's mostly done. It's just it required just one or two changes to the front end piece, the way that it was done, so that it didn't require the end user to have Node installed on their local machine. So that it uses actually the container in the cluster, but I don't know what the final state of that was. There's a few other things happening here as well around deployment guides and scripts, but we're making progress. Anyone got any comments about priority one, which is making it deployable? Okay. Number two. So this one, I guess, is relevant to a lot of people here. I think we were working on like, the volumes and secrets. I think Polo even had a preview he wanted to show of what he'd been working on. Or maybe not.
Yeah, not myself, but Tao, with some feedback, developed a mockup for the create volumes pop-up during the creation of the workspace. And Andy asked me to show so we can discuss, maybe gather some feedback to iterate on that mockup.
Did we, by the way, I forgot. I did. Has anyone added their things yet? Because I'll just remove them if they haven't, because I forgot to remove them.
I didn't.
Like, Paula, did you update yours in the stand-up part?
No, I didn't.
Okay, cool. I'm just gonna remove them just so that it's clear. Otherwise, it's confusing. Okay. So I guess we'll come back to that quickly. But is there any updates or things that are blocking overall other than the design of that we should talk about, and then we can go into specifics? Like, so to get the create flow done, I know there's like secret updates, APIs. Have we kind of?
Well, the API mockup is the API is open. Let me just check. I think it might be one of the PRs that Andy is asking for your review.
Mhm. Alok, let's talk after we go to this section, and then we can find you a task. What kind of developer are you? Are you a front end, back end, and what kind of level experience? Do you know Go? Do you know the front end stuff? It's hard to assign work without it knowing. Okay, cool. Let's. Okay. Anyway, and I think the Istio one, we're still waiting for. Cool. Okay. We can find you some tasks after this, but let's just And also, what company are you from? Um, okay, cool. Did someone link me the thing that you said before? I think someone linked it to me, right?
Yeah, this is the mockup that I mentioned.
Okay. Cool. Okay, so do you want to talk to it or?
Yeah, the idea, this first slide is the creation of workspace wizard. So in the last step, which is the properties, there is a expandable section called volumes, where you can set the home directory and then click create volume close to that pink line there. And then the pop-up in the next slide would appear with the form for the volumes.
Oh, this next slide, yep.
Yeah, so this is the pop-up. The idea is to have those fields there, PVC name, description, then access mode, the size, and the mount path. So in the next slide, there are also some details on these 1, 2, 3 observations. Or the access modes that would be available to set there. The sizes, the unit of size that we would made available on that dropdown. And then on the next slide, the volume would be listed in the wizard, and you would be able to add it as well, which is the next slide that would reopen the pop-up with the information set. But with some fields as read-only, as you couldn't edit a volume possibly after it's created. So I would say like probably in the creation of workspace, since it's not created yet, if you're not calling the backend to create the volume as soon as you feel this pop-up, but only when the actual wizard is submitted, you would be able to edit those fields. But during the workspace edition, when we use the same wizard, you wouldn't be able to edit certain fields because the volume would be already created.
So does that mean that there'll be like a final step, which is like review then?
No, there is no review. I don't believe anyone talked about having a review step, but you would be able to edit something that was not persisted yet because you're still filling the wizard.
I feel like adding the concept of a review plan or something step might actually be good. Just if we are going to have steps that are not, like stuff like this that isn't committed, if you will, until you click create, right? You know what I mean?
That's something to decide as well if it will be committed only on the create button. I guess it makes more.
Because also it has to be planned, right? If you don't create, because the backend doesn't, well, the backend is a REST API, right? So
Yeah.
you would have to, um, I'd have to check what the sequencing is. Think the backend, I don't think the controller rejects workspaces that don't have the volume exist. You know what I mean? I don't think it rejects them. It, I'm just thinking, yeah, because what would happen is the controller, if I don't think there's a webhook that rejects, because like what I'm saying is, let's say you created a workspace that mounts a volume that doesn't exist, right? Uh, in a CRD sense, you create it. Like I think it would allow that. I'm pretty sure. But what would happen is the pod template of the stateful set that's created would be in pending, right? It would say there's no workspace volume. Sorry, there's no volume. This volume doesn't exist yet. I can't start. And obviously that's also in line with the kind of weird flow that PVCs have, where they sometimes automatically get created and sometimes have to require admins to create them. The PV, weirdly, there's PV and PVC. Anyway, so I think that's actually something that, oh, I just realized we probably, so you know how we haven't had the API yet, for this? I can tell you right now, there's going to be one additional field that probably needs to be reflected to the user, which is, does the PV exist yet? So not PVC, but PV.
Okay.
Because I think we were planning to return the PV's name, and obviously if that's null, then it hasn't been created yet. Because that's the other thing, creating a PVC, depending on the storage driver, will maybe doesn't do anything. Like it might only do something when a pod starts trying to use it anyway. So, but coming back to your statement around like that some changes may not be finalized until you've finalized the creation or update workflow. I can imagine other ones in the future that are even more complex. Like, but maybe it's in a separate flow, but like, the resource provider idea that we talked about, creating a Spark cluster, creating a Ray cluster, creating a, maybe those are separate, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we discussed that before, right? I mean, it just came by my mind as I was talking about the mockup. If those intermediate actions during the wizard use would be executed even though the workspace wasn't created yet. The creation on the wizard wasn't pressed.
So what do we think is better?
That's a good question.
So the information, I think just as a piece of context, I think once you see the API of the PVC or volume, whatever we're calling it, API on the back end, we're going to give you a lot of information that I think will be quite surprising, and that's partially why it took a bit longer than expected, because there is a lot of actual complexity in this that users don't know. Like, for example, the storage size. It really needs an information question mark here that explains that PVCs do not, strictly speaking, have sizes, which I know sounds weird, but think of it more like a request of RAM or memory or CPU on a pod, right? Just because I request one core doesn't mean I don't end up on a server with 50 cores. Like, strictly speaking, most storage drivers of the Kubernetes have implemented themselves where the storage size is actually almost an initial request. Like, I want to be able to be at least this big, but not having no cap on the max, or the cap is determined by some other characteristic. So the current size may not even be reported to the back end of Kubernetes. But because what if it's an EFS volume? It's like theoretically infinite, right? Like a network storage. Anyway, so if we do them all at once, I guess the question becomes, should the create workspace API in the back end also provide the ability to create the other things in one API call? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that would certainly be easier for the front end. But this would work on the update as well.
So I think probably what might need to happen, and I think this comes back to thinking about for the case when one of these creates, right now they're all instantaneous. You know what I mean? Like you could argue that it's you will know instantaneously whether a PVC create or a secret create will fail or succeed. You know what I mean? But and it shouldn't take more than a few milliseconds. But you could imagine situations where it's probably fine to just kind of do everything all at once. Even like, for example, I was thinking, let's say you were mounting one of these new Spark cluster Spark cluster connecting resources that like adds the credentials to submit to a Spark job, submit to a Spark cluster. The Spark cluster needs to exist first, and if it's using the Spark operator, right? So, but it maybe doesn't. Maybe we could just start the Spark cluster and the notebook at the same time and hope it works. Maybe that doesn't work though, because there might be some. Oh no, but it's the pod in the end. The pod can just be blocked. Yeah, that's fine. I think so. I guess the question really is just then, okay, if we did it at the end, that means you're making a couple of API calls. And then maybe not being able to, like, say it crashes halfway between that first API call, you know what I mean? Like the first API call to create the PVC gets done, but not the next one that actually creates the workspace.
Okay, sorry, can you repeat the last part?
So what I'm saying is like, let's play it out. There's two possibilities. We're kind of going too much into depth here anyway, probably. But like, in my mind, there's two possibilities. The first is that as soon as you click create, it confirms, do you want to create this? You know what I mean? Or it just, it does. So I think the simplest path is to do it right here. You know what I mean? Like that you do it as soon as you hit create. I think that's probably what we should do for this particular case. But for mainly because that's how secrets probably should be, right?
You mean when we create the secret,
Or
we
update.
already call our update. We'll be already calling the API in the pop-up, right?
Yeah, like as soon as it closes, right? And because like in my mind, this page is about create or mount volumes in the same way that you could do on the other page, but just in the context of a workspace,
Okay,
So
then
like, and because another thing that you'll see in the API will be that it will show you, it will try and indicate to the front end whether it would be even possible to mount this to another pod. And if not, which pod would need to be stopped for it to be able to be done. You know what I mean? Like, it's another important thing so because the thing we ran into, which was complex, was that PVs can represent almost anything, ranging from a remote storage system like NFS or S3 to something that is only accessible on certain nodes in the cluster to something that is only accessible on one node, right? Which is like a local storage device. And so it's clear, most people also don't know that, those access modes you've got there, they refer to nodes, like kubelets, if you will. Container runtimes, maybe a better way to say it, right? Like when you run Docker run on the same host, you can obviously mount the same volume twice. But if you run, if it's a local storage, but obviously that's read write once. Read write many obviously means many different nodes can all read and write, which means it has to be like NFS or Lustre. Is there any okay, anyway, what was I assume you were just planning to run the API when you hit create, right?
Yeah, I think I was thinking while you were talking is also probably the easiest way for both front end and back end would be to just call the API once we click the create in the pop-up. And then the actions are kind of more separate between themselves.
And that also is one of the, it's weird, but that's actually a feature of Notebooks 2.0, that users are explicitly creating workspace volumes rather than automatically, because that's a big issue with Notebooks v1, that they naturally accidentally create a new home volume every time they start a server. So this then becomes a question though, which is, do we want to treat home volumes specially in some way? And we kind of already do, but what I mean by that is, I guess it's less of a problem now with V2 that you can resize a notebook, you know what I mean? By just changing its pod config. But previously people would delete and recreate them, right? And then they would not necessarily mount the correct home volume anymore. And then they just have another home volume. But I guess the question is, how often do we expect people to delete home volumes? Delete notebooks now. Not as often, I think.
Yeah, hopefully not as often as before, since we're giving more options for managing them.
Okay.
But I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, this is cool. Anyone else got any feedback on this one? So, or other things you want to talk about, Paulo, around this?
No, that's it for now.
So do you want feedback, or how do you, this is obviously built to some extent, I guess.
No, this is only mock-ups for now.
Oh,
We
I
don't
see.
have the UI done. But yeah, if you need to point, as you did for some fields, things that we should include or remove, feel free to either send me a message or we can write in the document as well.
So the thing that I think we do need to discuss from a mock-up and user experience perspective is the whole point of Notebooks v2 is that we want to avoid users thinking about Kubernetes. This is crazy. You know what I mean? Like, users should not have to think about read write once, read write many, read write. What the heck? You know what I mean? Like that. In the same way that we have pod template, maybe we need volume template, which then an admin can define a template that corresponds to something that actually makes user sense. You know what I mean? Like local NVMe. You know?
Yeah, that's an option for sure. I mean, Bella wouldn't. Well, the template, yeah,
You know
would
what I'm
have
saying, right?
the template, yeah.
And then it becomes a question of what does that mean? Because I think we've worked really hard to get rid of people thinking about pods. You know? Right?
Yeah, but the only thing on the template would be that, because the size is quite customizable, right? Depending on the use case.
Sure, but I think size is something that users can understand, right? But
Yeah.
and another thing as well is that users, the thing that a data scientist cares about is twofold. It is speed, IOPS, like throughput in terms of IOPS and bytes per second in both read write and random IO versus sequential IOs at various chunk sizes. They care about obviously having a volume of something persistent, but they understand size though. You know what I mean? Like, but what I don't want them to think about is how. I think we need to abstract it somehow, right? But now we run into a problem, which is while we do have a new feature of Notebooks 2.0, which is a bit better, which is that you can't mount any volume. Unless it has a specific label. We need to think about if the templates are one way in the same way as the Notebooks v1 notebook creation flow was, where it creates and then it's a volume and then the user doesn't actually, that we lose all connection back to the information that the user was given, Or whether it's
Yeah, I'm not sure about that anymore.
and it's so much more complex than it even seems on the surface, just because of the way persistent volumes are actually created. And also, I think let's come back to as I do think I just okay, is anyone else got anything? I do want to have a quick discussion about this because I think this is just really important for everyone here to understand. Let's think about it from a user perspective, right? I'm a data scientist. I'm a machine learning guy. I'm a data engineer.
Yeah.
The actual hardware on these systems, like storage, is very misunderstood, I think, in Kubernetes, right? So, like in the end, we're still dealing with the old storage appliances that we always were. There's like three categories of storage, right? There's like that is durable storage. Okay, there's like three categories of durable storage. There's like APIs, which are like S3 based ones, and then there's network storage like NFS or Lustre, and then there's local storage, right? Like these access modes abstract that in a very confusing way to users, I think. Obviously, node local storage is problematic because it means that the user, if that node goes down, that storage is lost, right? They need to understand that it's not durable beyond the life of that node, right? Unless, okay, there's actually a third kind as well. I'm just diving into the depths of cloud architectures here. There is RDMA addressable storage that looks like node local storage. And what I mean by that is when you create, for example, an EBS volume on EKS, it can give you similar performance as if it was an NVMe plugged into the host. But it can actually move between hosts, but it can only be attached to one host at a time. And that's because it's actually a network storage that's just pretending it's a local storage from a hardware perspective. So in any case, the admin of, I think coming back to my point is that the admin of the cluster knows what they've provisioned, what they have in their cluster, right? How do we make it so that they just impart that knowledge to the things that the user actually cares about? Like, how fast is the storage that you're giving me? How many nodes can I mount it to multiple workspaces or not? What would I have to do to move it between nodes? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's hard to think all the information that Joel would be able to fill that's not customizable by the data scientist. Because those questions you said seem like they could change all the fields in this pop-up, for instance. Perhaps it's not a matter of the template, but to write the information in a more user-friendly way, especially for the access mode there.
I think access modes needs to be like a tick box or some drop down. I don't know, right? Something else, right? It's
Yeah.
Anyway,
and have like a default one that would be used for most cases.
I think we do need volume templates, though. I think at very least, even if it goes one way, right? The where the admin can define just even a blob of text that explains this template, if used, will create something that does this, right? Like, because for example, you're missing a field here. Really important field, which is storage class.
Storage class.
You know what I'm saying? And so in the same way that workspace kind is the first option, right? We can't really tell you anything until you pick that, right? Like.
So what are the options for that field?
Unfortunately, that field is completely up to the way the cluster is configured. So in an EKS cluster, the most common storage classes are EFS and EBS, with EFS being a network NFS managed system and EBS being, technically speaking, very complex what it is, but being fast storage, but it's limited by only being able to be run on one node, right? And so the admin has to make either of them though. There's neither of them are there by default.
So that's a good argument for the template now.
Of course, we could also magic a little bit, and I think it's possible that it's not template, that it's so the backend, right? When it sees, or the controller, maybe it's unclear where, the controller something will look at the cluster and see which storage classes are there, or the backend. We can look at the storage class and say, hey, we know that's an EBS volume. We know the characteristics of EBS. In fact, this even is somewhat described here. These are all the storage drivers. As you can see, there is a lot. But they do have known characteristics. So like maybe part of me thinks that maybe it's not a template, but it's translating the characteristics of a storage class into human readable words at a cluster level, because it's a cluster level thing, right?
Yeah, but you're saying it's just one option. There wouldn't be multiple. That's why you are not liking the template anymore?
Well, there's another template kind as well now, which is this is another reason why we've kind of gone a bit over again, but like I'll just again, it's probably going to be easier to explain once we've got an API, because it's just so much weirder than you think. So the one other thing to consider is that I'll show it on screen for people who are liking context. And I'm sorry, Alok, we should get to you as quickly as possible so that we can find you a task. Which company do you come from, by the way? But I'll just show this while we're here, which is Kubestellar, CNCF Sandbox project. Okay, cool. You're a student. Awesome. Yeah. We're always up for people helping. Probably the best place will be, it'll be easy to get tasks next week, but have you built a controller before? I'll just show you this while we're waiting. Samples. Okay, so no, sorry, workspace. So remember what we're actually doing in the end. Oh, nice. Awesome. If you've got controller experience, then we have great tasks that you can help out with. Interesting. Will you have time to work on this, or is it just something you're looking at doing? And do you want to become like a long-term contributor, or just looking for some interesting projects? I'm fine with either way. It's good to know. Okay, so amazing. I love it when people say they want to become a long-term contributor. Okay. So, I would say definitely message in. So come to these meetings, obviously, first step. And second off, message in the Kubeflow Notebooks channel and tag Andy and Hashad. Hopefully you can find that name. And they're both working on the controller stuff and backend stuff for Notebooks v2. And it'll be more easy next week when they're here. Unfortunately, they're not here today. So yes. Okay. So if you want something to look at the moment, maybe look at. I'd say just try. It's going to be easy to do. So yeah, I know. It's really one of those things we probably need to come back next week. But message in the chat, and people are going to be away today, so maybe message a couple days from now when people are back. Okay. I just wanted to show what I was showing before, and then we can stop, and then we can do some pull request reviews, I think. Which is, so the way that what is actually happening, Paulo, is that we're adding a volume we've added this concept called volumes, right? So volumes do directly correspond to a pod volume. And we've got a special one for home just because of the way it is set up. Of course, that's not used in every distribution, but for us, we do treat the home with special situations, but it's a name of a PVC. And we have data PVCs to mount. Technically, this doesn't have to be to PVCs. We could, but it probably does. Yeah, it probably has to be PVC. That's fine. We also added secrets as this one here. And then we were also planning to add images because now there's a new volume kind, not of PVC, but of pod volume called image, right? Like container image. So you can mount the contents of a container image as a volume path, which is kind of cool. And so the section of the UI that mounts volumes needs to, well, we're kind of splitting secrets up, I guess, into its own thing. But maybe it should be called mounts, not volumes. And then we should have those initially two kinds, secrets and these ones, and then with the implication that there'll be more kinds of volumes as well, right? Mounts, sorry.
Okay, so you're in favor of unifying volumes and secrets there on this UI? I mean, in the wizard, not on the pop-up.
I don't know how to spell Harshad's name. Let me just get his name. I think his name is spelled Harshad. Okay, cool. So, it's not that they need to be unified in like a UI sense. It's more that, conceptually speaking, you're mounting things to the pod in the end.
Yeah.
And because your flow was properties, where were you planning to put secrets? Oh, there you go. They should be separate, definitely, I think, but like not. What's with this sidebar, by the way? Why is Jupyter SciPy, whatever this, why is this here,
And this was the image selected.
But isn't this, we're in pod config or properties or something, are we? Or are you saying, I'm confused. Okay, whatever.
I think we just keep it. I need to check the UI, I don't remember now, but we keep there just as a remembrance for the user of what was selected before.
I guess, okay, cool. So, I do think home volume probably needs its own section as well. That's my only kind of vibe here, right? Because as much as it's created using the same flow and mounted, like create or mount, it is special and it needs to be disableable for users who don't need it. But like some images don't need home volume, like Red Hat's ones.
Okay, so a new expandable section called home. Like that.
Yeah, but I mean that's a question of is it still under volumes, you know what I mean? And then it's just like the first section. Like the way I was always envisioning it was like almost like, I know it's not great, but like cards, you know what I mean? Where it's like the ones that are attached. I know table might be a better view of it, but like the home volume is, I don't know. Anyway, the point is,
If you want to go to the fourth slide, there is one there, just to better visualize.
I don't understand home directory though. Can you explain that?
I think it's just the name of the. If you go with that YAML, the CR for the workspace, there is a home directory there, which is a string. Basically, we don't do any. Don't have any validation.
Because there's the workspace doesn't have
home.
It has home, yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is a PVC as well.
Yeah.
So like this needs to be the same concept of a volume, right? Well,
yeah, it's a pointer, right? Maybe Yeah, you would need to put the name of the volume that you added below.
It needs to have the same information, right? Which is like it's a volume. Like this, the only difference is that you can't control its mount path.
Isn't it a pointer to the data array of what
No,
element?
it's not. It's not at all. No, it's this. In fact, I know it looks the same, but these are actually different words. See?
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah, I'm reading the comment there.
yeah. So this
That already
is
exists.
yeah. So the difference is that this is additional mounts, whereas this is a required mount for some types of workspace kinds, and most of them though. And the default ones, all of them. And we need it to be read write many or read write once, and the path, as it says, is defined under the workspace kind. And so this is just the same pick a workspace kind, sorry, pick a volume PVC, sorry, pick a PVC, but you just don't get to choose its mount path. You know what I mean?
The other arguments the user should choose there, like the
Well, they might need to. Well, they will need to create one, right? So this is must exist already, but that's what we're doing right now. We're creating it, you know, or mounting an existing one. So we need to show the user the ability. So like we need to filter the list of available volumes to the ones that are allowed to be used as home volumes, you know?
okay, so filter from.
So effectively there'll be a separate, so if you go up here, say there's like, so there'll be two sections, maybe home volumes and volumes, or home volume and volumes. The mount, I don't quite see, so you've got to create, right? But what about mount? Like where's the mount button as well, right? Mount existing.
I think the idea is that they use the same pop-up, but some will be already there and just attach it to the workspace.
Yeah, it's more attach, right? It's like attach, yeah. And then when you do something strange, it'll warn you, hopefully the backend will warn you that, hey, one of these notebooks can't start because it's mounting the same one.
Yeah.
Although that is going to be very hard for us to actually tell you just because of the way that this is relating to nodes, not pods, right? So,
But is this something that the API could deal with?
so all it's going to be able to do is list out the other pods in the namespace that are using the thing. Once a pod is started, so we'll be able to give you a lot more information once a workspace is started, which is, could I mount the volume to this, you know? Although we won't. It's one of those situations where you almost just need to try and check. You know what I mean? Like where it's the most information I can give you is just, is the volume currently created? Does the volume even exist? Like PVCs manage the creation of volumes. Does the PV even exist? If it exists, where does it exist? If it exists, where is it mounted? You know what I mean? Like, and is it and given that, the user has to make some assessment as to whether what might need to happen if they wish to mount it to a different volume workspace. You know, like it's
okay, it's more complex then.
It's very complex. Like it's actually insane. Like this is why we ended up having to table it for a little bit of time on the API side. Anyway, we've gone way over here. Sorry for everyone else. Okay.
Okay,
So
we can discuss it on the Tuesday meeting as well.
definitely, yeah, we
More
need to.
details. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So anyone else got anything they want to talk about on the recording? Otherwise, we'll just do some pull request reviews. Thank you for coming. Did a bit of a weirdly technical there. Probably should have gone off, but yeah, thank you for coming, everyone.